the other 2%. This is something that has confounded all of science and all of medicine for a very long time. I call it evil.
Ever since movies about exorcism hit the big screen back in 1973, or at least, I don't know if that was the first movie about exorcism, or maybe just the first one that hit as big as it did, but ever since then, there has been no shortage of movies about exorcisms throughout the years. So if you're going to come out with a movie about exorcisms, you better come up with something new and different and interesting. Does this movie do this? The Pope's Exorcist is a horror movie about Gabriel Amorth, who is the chief exorcist at the Vatican and who reports directly to the Pope himself. He is sent to Spain because a boy is believed to be possessed by an ancient evil that the church has had to deal with before. Jesus tap dancing Christ. I mean, this movie is the epitome of everything wrong with big studio horror movies. Every instinct it seems to have, from its constant noisy sound design or things being shoved onto the screen to its 30 different camera angles for every scene in this movie, it just goes against everything about what makes a horror movie a good one. And let me tell you, this movie is not good. Not by a long shot. The story starts out in June of 1987. The movie throws up specific dates in this for some reason, even though it seemingly doesn't have anything to do with the plot or story in any way, shape, or form. But Gabriel, our main character, heads to a small village because he heard about a teenage boy who's possessed by the devil. He walks in to find out that the boy can speak English, even though the family suggests that he can't. Gabriel then asks if there's a TV in the house, to which they say, yes, there is. He then goes through a show of an exorcism where he basically tricks the boy into possessing a pig instead. The boy then complies, and then they shoot the pig, which heals the boy. Later on, Gabriel is then brought in front of this high council at the Vatican in order to be debriefed and report on these occurrences. And it's revealed that he felt the boy was not possessed at all. It was all theatrics. It was basically done to trick the boy into believing that he is possessed in order to free him of this quote-unquote possession.
98% of the cases that are assigned to Father Amorth are then further recommended by him to doctors and psychiatrists.
So why didn't he do that with this boy? I have no idea. But that's hardly the biggest problem in this movie, but it is symptomatic of a larger issue. This movie chooses larger theatrics over story and logic time and time again. Now, in the meantime, an American family, a mother, a daughter, and a son, I'm not even going to mention their character names because it doesn't matter. The movie doesn't give a shit about them anyway. They are literally just meat puppets in order to be shuffled around wherever they need to be for the plot to move forward. They are moving to an old abbey in Spain that they inherited from their dead father and husband, and they are looking to fix it up in order to sell it because they need money. So as the workmen are restoring this abbey, they accidentally open up this hidden room in the basement, which lets out an evil presence that ends up possessing the boy. And then, of course, we see the obligatory young kid possessed tropes. But don't worry about that because the movie doesn't really care about that either. It just has to get through it because it's in other movies, so we have to have it here. And so it just whips through stuff like the boy scratching his own face, saying lewd comments to his mother, which then creates a brief trip to the hospital where they think he's psychotic, but then they have no real solutions. Like, it's all just glided over to get to the quote-unquote good stuff, or as the movie deems it. Finally, at the end of this almost montage, the boy is in bed and demands a priest. And in one of the most laughable scenes possible, where he yells at the mother and daughter and then lifts his shirt to reveal the word hate carved into his chest. Like, fucking what? This whole movie feels like just a giant checklist without the understanding of why there is a checklist in the first place. Like, the point of having a message carved in the chest is to show how inexplicable it would be to happen and to convince those around this person that it's not normal. But in this movie, they just kind of throw it out there with no setup, just to do it. Of course, then they actually do this exact same thing again later on in the movie. I mean, talk about running out of ideas. So, at her wit's end, the mother goes and decides to get the local priest, who walks into the room and is immediately thrown out through the doorway and crashes into a cabinet across the hall, absolutely destroying it.
Wrong priest!
Oh boy. We then cut to the Vatican where the Pope tells Gabriel that he must go and see this case, and to be careful as they had had trouble in that location in the past. How did the Pope hear about this? Like, does the local priest have any ties to the Vatican at all? No. Does he know anybody connected to Gabriel? No. In the context of the movie, wouldn't the priest just get local help, maybe from his bishop or his local representation? Like, this priest has never done an exorcism before, and he seems surprised when Gabriel shows up, even though he knows who Gabriel is. So how did this make its way to the very top of the food chain in a matter of a day? No idea. But once again, the movie doesn't give a shit either, which is why we just speed through it. So Gabriel shows up and has this conversation with the boy. Once again, it is the same thing you've seen. The boy speaks in English, he speaks in Latin. He's able to convince Gabriel that he is in fact real. First off, all right, this boy is borderline comical. He speaks in a British accent, which is an odd choice. And I just couldn't help thinking of Gollum from Lord of the Rings because, goddamn, it's real close. And why does he speak in an English accent? I mean, I don't really know what accent a demon should speak in, but given that the last body this demon possessed was Spanish, it would have made much more sense to at least have a Spanish accent. But whatever, I don't know, I don't care. Then it's a series of exorcist tropes. Once again, you've seen this before. The boy reveals secrets about the priest that he wouldn't normally known, causing momentary loss of faith. There's a lot of yelling of Bible prayers. There's tormenting of the mother and the sister. This all culminates when Gabriel and side priest go down into the basement and find that this was the site of an ancient evil. And this is where things go from dumb to fucking bananas. So the entire movie I kept wondering, why the hell was Russell Crowe in this movie? Like, don't get me wrong, he's actually the only good thing about this movie. He's got the same sort of level of commitment and command on screen as he's had his entire career. I mean, I give him credit. There are large portions of this movie where he speaks Italian, and he is committed. He's interesting, he's deep, he's flawed, he's fun to watch. He also feels like he's in the wrong movie. I was generally sad to see what a shit show of a script was built around him. I mean, this character deserves better. And so I kept wondering, why is he in this movie? All right, so now we're going to get into some spoilers. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers, I would say skip ahead. Gabriel and side priests then go down into the basement and find that a Spanish conquistador that had taken over this abbey was also the main exorcist of the Church of Spain. So during a routine exorcism, he was actually possessed himself and then went back to the head of Spain and infiltrated the Spanish royalty and was the root cause for the incredibly bloody Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition!
And then for some reason, somehow this possessed person ended up coming back to this abbey and then locking himself up in the basement so that he could not cause further harm, which, why he decided to do this after the demon was successfully infiltrated and did all of this killing, I have no idea. But I guess for the next thing to occur, this is what had to happen. Anyway, they then find a map of the world with spots marked off on it. It's a battle map of sorts with a plan for the demons to take over the world. I shit you not. The demons have a map for a plan to take over the world by possessing key figures in it. A demon with a map. Apparently this demon is a possessor of exorcists, not regular people. And he wanted to bring Gabriel here as part of its plan. This whole thing is so fucking stupid, I literally laughed out loud in the theater. Thankfully, the theater was mostly empty, so it didn't really matter. So we go back to the boy, who is quite literally throwing people around left and right. This is a huge pet peeve I have with exorcism movies. So the demon is able to throw people around. I mean, the mom gets tossed end over end, slammed against the wall, and held there. At the same time, the daughter's lifted up and choked, and has her head twisted around her neck. All of these displays of insane strength, and their answer to this is to tie his arms to the bed. He didn't use his arms for any of this shit. What good does that do? Oh wait, because you saw it in another movie. Oh, that's it. That's the best we've got. And that's another thing that was so crazy. The amount of times that people are bouncing off the walls and furniture in this movie is downright comical. I mean, it's like a goddamn Marvel movie, for Christ's sakes. At one point, the sister gets thrown across the room and slammed up against the wall about halfway up. She then falls to the floor and immediately coughs out a bunch of blood. Now, there doesn't appear to be any cuts on her face, and her mouth isn't shown to be bleeding later on. So in the real world, like, that's internal bleeding. But in this movie, it's just a Tuesday. Just rub some dirt on it, get back in there, kid, you'll be fine. Anyway, so Gabriel realizes that he is the actual central target for this, not the boy, and then allows the demon to enter him in order to save the rest of the family. And then he and the side priest do the same exorcist things that they were trying to do to the boy, but instead they do it to Gabriel in order to thwart the demon and to cast him off. And then Gabriel makes a quip, because this movie has those, of course. Gabriel then reports back to the Vatican, and one final piece locks into place. Earlier, I was wondering why Russell Crowe was in this movie. Well, this is where I get my answer. It's a fucking origin story. Apparently, the Vatican has a secret room with all of the biggest minds of the church, and they have analyzed the demon map, and there are hundreds of possessed or demons around the globe that they must stop before they take over. So Gabriel and side priests now agree to take on this challenge. And so in perfect 2023 fashion, this is not a movie, it's a fucking franchise setup. And that's why Russell Crowe is in this movie. It's Sony's version of Constantine meets The Kingsman. God damn it. At the end of the day, if you've seen an Exorcist movie, then just go watch that one. Like, this has nothing new. Russell Crowe is great in this. Full stop. But that is exactly where it ends as far as what's good about this movie. I get it. Exorcist movies have been done to death, and carving out something new or different can be really hard, but this is definitely not the way to do it. This quasi-superhero style hodgepodge is just terrible. Like, it tries to be dark and serious one moment, but the rules of reality are twisted or downright broken whenever it suits them in service of spectacle. And that is the biggest problem with big studios and horror movies. Big studios don't know how to do horror anymore because horror doesn't play to their strengths. Horror is the exact opposite of what big studios understand movies to be. Big studios understand movies to be bigger, louder, more action, more comedy, bigger set pieces, more expensive. More. Those are the exact same qualities that work against horror movies. You look at any good horror movie, and they work because they are small, personal, scaled down, grounded. Even bigger budget movies that are less real and deal with lofty world-building movies like Alien or Event Horizon or A Quiet Place scale down the horror to a smaller, more real moments to achieve its tone and success. I would be hard-pressed to come up with a big studio horror movie in recent years that accomplishes any of this. Like, the aforementioned Quiet Place does this for a while, but its biggest fails are the parts where money and studio power enter into it, basically the end with all the CGI creatures. A smaller movie would have had to find a way around showing so much of the alien because they just simply couldn't afford to do it. Also, the movie It was a great example of this. The first one was atmospheric and creepy, where each scene was brought down to a personal level, and the second one, they went through the roof with bigger, louder, and more things. And as a result, it was far less effective a movie. You look at Jordan Peele's movie, From Get Out to Us to Nope, and it has become less effective the larger his budgets have become. Asking a big studio to make a horror movie is like asking a football lineman to hit a curveball. They aren't lesser for being unable to do it. It's just not in their playbook or skill set. And that's fine. Everyone can't do everything. I would give this movie a D. But let me know what you think.